Okay, so let's dive right in. There's this word in healthcare, governance, right? And, when you first hear it, what springs to mind? Maybe policies, endless rules. Maybe sounds a bit dry, perhaps a bit bureaucratic even. But what if it's actually like the absolute heartbeat of quality care, the foundation for patient safety, and really where that enduring patient trust comes from? Today, our mission, if you will, is to take a deep dive. We're looking at the National Health Regulatory Authority, the NHRA Accreditation Standards, specifically for medical centers in Bahrain. And we're really going to zero in on one vital part, element three, governance. Now, for all you healthcare owners, the leadership teams, the quality and risk managers listening in Bahrain, this isn't just about ticking boxes for compliance. Think of this as a genuine guide, a practical guide to not just meet the standards, but to really elevate the care you provide. And here's something really telling. The NHRA document itself, it states quite clearly, whatever the size and complexity of the medical center there should always be good governance. That's quite a statement, isn't it? It applies to everyone. So the big question for us today is, what does this good governance actually look like on the ground, day to day, in a medical center in Bahrain, and how can you make sure your center truly embodies it?
That's a really crucial point. And what's fascinating, I think, is how the NHRA doesn't just leave good governance as some vague idea.
Right.
They give a very clear, very actionable definition of something they call integrated governance. They define it, and it's worth getting the wording right, as systems, processes, and behaviors by which medical centers lead, direct, and control their functions to achieve organizational objectives, safety, and quality of service, and in which they relate to patients and carers, the wider community, and partner organizations.
Okay, that's quite packed. Systems, processes, and behaviors.
Exactly. It's not just theory from a textbook. What it boils down to,
Right.
practically speaking, is making sure your leadership team actually has the tools, the mechanisms to deliver on the center's goals.
Yeah.
And to do it in a way that's, comprehensible, actionable for everyone involved. It really forces that laser focus onto the patient, onto their safety,
Yeah.
which, let's face it, is paramount in healthcare.
Absolutely.
And if you think about the bigger picture, having this kind of integrated framework, it helps centers really demonstrate how they're managing risk, how they're governing themselves. It's not just talk. You used the analogy of a heartbeat earlier. I sometimes think of it as the central nervous system of the facility.
Oh, I like that.
The-
Central nervous system.
Yeah, it connects everything. It makes sure all the different parts, admin, clinical, finance, records, are all talking to each other, all working towards those same goals. High quality, safe, efficient care. It's what turns a collection of departments into a single functioning synergistic entity.
That central nervous system idea really captures that interconnectedness, doesn't it? Okay, so diving a bit deeper then. The NHRA standards break this down further. You mentioned it's an integrated umbrella, but under that, there are 5 distinct types of governance, like foundational pillars.
That's a great way to put it. 5 foundational pillars, all interconnected, holding up the whole structure. We need to understand each one to see how they fit together.
Let's break them down then. What's the first pillar?
Okay, first up is corporate governance. This aligns with element 1 in the NHRA standards. Think of this as the big picture stuff, the overarching system, the rules, the practices, the processes that dictates how the entire organization is directed and controlled from the top down, how it achieves its objectives.
So the how it's run.
Exactly. Board responsibilities, strategic planning, that kind of thing. But crucially, it's not just about running things. It's also about actively considering the risks to achieving those objectives. That's where risk management strategies become integral to corporate oversight. It's about steering the ship responsibly, ethically, making sure leadership is accountable for the mission, not just the bottom line.
Got it. Corporate governance, pillar 1. What's next?
Next is clinical governance. This is in section 3.3, and, well, this is where it directly impacts patient care, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It feels central.
It really is. The NHRA defines it as a system for medical centers to be accountable for continuously improving service quality and safeguarding high standards of care. And the goal, they state, is creating an environment where excellence in clinical care will flourish.
Excellence will flourish. That's a high bar.
It is. And it means actively fostering a culture of continuous improvement in everything related to patient care quality, ensuring decisions are evidence-based, safe, effective. It's that commitment to the best possible outcomes, always.
Okay, corporate and clinical, pillar 3.
Pillar 3 is financial governance. You'll find this in section 3.5. This involves, as you'd expect, strict rules and guidance to make sure all the money side of things is really well governed.
Makes sense. What does that cover specifically?
Broad, internal controls, Audits, both internal and external, clear process workflows for how money moves, financial controls to prevent mistakes or fraud, accurate data tracking for budgets and forecasts, and, critically important, securing financial information and ensuring the integrity of all reporting. It's about the financial health and accountability that allows everything else to happen.
The engine room, almost.
Kind of, yeah. Without sound financial governance, the best clinical intentions can just stall. Resources might not be there or they get mismanaged. It's essential, even if less visible sometimes.
Right. Pillar 4.
That's information governance, corresponding to element 5. And in today's world, with so much digital data, this is absolutely crucial.
Administration data, yeah. Hugely sensitive.
Exactly. So these standards are about ensuring centers maintain full, accurate information, patient records, operational data, but doing it while keeping that information confidential and secure. Always. It covers the whole life cycle of information: creation, storage, use, sharing, and eventual secure disposal. Managing data properly, protecting privacy, ensuring it's available when needed for care, but locked down otherwise.
Okay. And the final pillar.
The fifth pillar is risk governance, which is covered in element 6. This outlines the rules and guidance the center needs for identifying, assessing, managing, and communicating all types of risk.
All types, so not just clinical.
Nope. Clinical, operational, financial, reputational risk, data security risks, everything. It's about being proactive, building a shield, anticipating potential harms, and mitigating them before they happen. It's about building resilience across the board, not just reacting when something goes wrong, thinking ahead to keep things running safely.
5 pillars. Corporate, clinical, financial, information, and risk. Phew.
Yeah, it's comprehensive. But the key thing, and this brings us back to element 3, is how they integrate. So this raises that important question. How do these 5 pillars actually work together? Not in silos, but as a cohesive whole.
Right. Because integrated is the key word here.
Precisely. The NHRA stresses that good governance, when it's truly integrated across these areas, provides solid assurance. Assurance to patients, to their families, to the staff, to the wider community, to all stakeholders. It builds confidence. Confidence in the quality, the safety, the responsible use of resources. And element 3, which is our focus today, really delves into how governance integrates clinical and non-clinical services. And, very importantly, how things like handling complaints and getting consent are woven into that bigger picture.
So it's showing the connections in practice.
Exactly. It's demonstrating that holistic, interconnected approach where everything genuinely affects everything else. Accountability across the board.
Okay, that provides a really clear high-level map. Let's get into the specifics now, the real nuts and bolts for the people listening, the owners, leaders, quality managers in Bahrain who need to implement this for NHRA accreditation. Section 3.1 talks about integrated governance itself. What does the NHRA actually require for the team that oversees this and the plan that guides it? This sounds like the blueprint.
You're right. Section 3.1 lays out the practical framework. First, let's look at the integrated governance team. The standard says this team must be multi-professional. That means bringing people together from different areas: clinical, admin, finance, quality, risk. You need that mix of perspectives.
Not just managers, then.
No, a genuine mix. And they need documented terms of reference, clear rules about their scope, responsibilities, how they report, how they operate, no ambiguity. And here's a critical point. The team must include the medical director and the chief executive officer, or their equivalent, plus other senior managers.
Why is that so crucial, having the top brass involved?
Because it ensures buy-in and accountability right from the very top. It shows this isn't just some committee tucked away somewhere. It's central to leadership's focus, their main job, to provide assurance that the goals in the integrated governance plan are actually being met. They do this by monitoring data, tracking performance.
Okay. What about smaller centers? Does this structure still apply?
The NHRA acknowledges that. For smaller medical centers, this role, this remit, might be integrated into existing leadership meetings. It could potentially cover clinical governance too, so there's flexibility, recognizing different sizes, but the core principle of oversight remains. It has to be scalable.
Right, makes sense. So you have the team. What about the plan they follow?
Good question. You need the integrated governance plan. It's not enough just to have the team meet. They need a roadmap. This plan has to be current and it has to be actively implemented, not just sitting on a shelf. It needs to include the key objectives that ensure the center operates according to all the regulations in Bahrain. And also, importantly, that patients and staff are monitored and managed effectively.
Patient safety, staff well-being, that broad scope again.
Exactly. And depending on the center size and complexity, this plan might and often probably should integrate other plans, like the risk management plan or the clinical governance plan.
So one cohesive strategy document.
Ideally, yes. It avoids fragmented efforts, ensures everything's aligned. It's the strategic roadmap for the whole center's health and compliance.
And how does this team keep tabs on risks specifically?
Through the Corporate Risk Register review, this is a really vital function of the integrated governance team. They are explicitly required to review the Corporate Risk Register at least quarterly, minimum.
Quarterly review. And what are they looking for?
They're assessing any risks that could potentially stop the medical center from meeting its strategic goals, its values, its mission. Think about things like maybe risks around staff turnover, unexpected equipment failures, changes in regulations, economic pressures.
All sorts of things could impact the mission.
Yeah, absolutely. And any actions that come out of that, review new controls, policy changes, resource allocation, they have to be noted down. And then followed up in the next meeting to check progress. This ties directly into Element 6, the broader risk management framework, making sure risks are identified, logged, managed, and reported upwards to leadership. It's proactive.
Okay, so team, plan, risk review. What about measuring how things are actually going? Performance.
Crucial piece. That falls under performance assessment and reporting. The standards require tangible evidence minutes, reports showing that regular meetings happen specifically to assess performance against defined indicators.
And what sort of indicators are we talking about?
They need to be based on two things: national requirements for Bahrain and the medical center's own specific objectives and services. So it could include things like staffing levels, patient complaints data, clinical incidents, risks identified, budget performance, specific clinical outcomes like infection rates, quality audit results. Quite a wide range.
And what happens if performance isn't up to scratch?
That's the key. When performance isn't compliant, specific actions must be assigned to named individuals with clear deadlines. Accountability.
Right. Someone owns the fix.
Precisely. And there also needs to be a clear process for reporting all this performance data up to the leadership team. This ensures senior leaders know exactly where the problems are and can provide the support needed to fix them, whether that's through quality committee reports, dashboards, or direct improvement plans. It's that continuous feedback loop driving improvement.
Okay, that really clarifies the strategic structure. But governance feels like it should be more than just internal meetings and reports, right? Where does the patient's actual experience come into play? Things like, well, complaints or the whole consent process. These seem fundamental.
You're absolutely right. And the NHRA standards place a strong emphasis here. Let's talk about complaints first, under Section 3.2. Complaints aren't just negative noise. They shouldn't be seen as a burden. They are incredibly valuable data points.
Valuable.
For spotting system issues, driving quality improvements, managing risk proactively. They're a vital source of organizational learning.
Okay. So how should centers manage them according to NHRA?
First, there has to be a designated person. Someone specifically responsible for managing complaints. And this person needs the authority to actually make decisions and take action to resolve them. This ensures accountability and efficient handling. They're the focal point.
Got it. A designated lead. What else?
A comprehensive policy and procedures document for complaints management is non-negotiable. This policy has to spell out how everyone, patients, families, carers, is informed of their right to complain. Signage, website info, leaflets maybe. It needs to outline the reporting schedule for complaints analysis, and then the practical steps, how you respond, the time frames for responding, which must be reasonable and stated clearly.
Keeping people in the loop.
Hugely important for trust. How you keep complainants informed of progress. How complaints are recorded, including grading their severity, the potential risk they highlight. It also needs to cover acknowledgement timescales, record retention times, how complex complaints are handled, the internal investigation process, pathways for internal and external appeals, even mediation options.
That's very detailed.
It has to be. And the NHRA stresses that formal responses must be easy to understand. No dense medical or admin jargon.
Plain language.
Exactly. And crucially, the policy must guarantee absolutely no discrimination against anyone just because they made a complaint. That's vital for encouraging honest feedback. It builds a safe reporting culture.
Okay, so a strong policy. What about tracking the complaints?
Every single complaint needs to be logged in a complaints register. This isn't just a list. It has to detail the grade, severity, and potential future risk to patients and the center. Like, a long wait time might seem minor, but if it's happening constantly, it's a risk to efficiency, maybe even safety.
Seeing the patterns.
Yes. And this register can, and probably should, link into the main risk management system. The NHRA emphasizes looking at complaints alongside incident reports and claims data. Trying to connect the dots. Did this complaint relate to a reported incident? Are we learning from past issues?
So analyzing across different data sources.
Precisely. Moving from just reacting to one complaint to proactively improving the system based on combined intelligence.
And how is that analysis used?
That's the final piece. Rigorous analysis and reporting. All complaints data must be trended, aggregated, and analyzed at least quarterly. Look for patterns, spikes in certain departments, issues with specific procedures. A summary report of this analysis then goes to the integrated governance team for discussion and action. And the NHRA wants this analysis compared with other feedback too, patient surveys, staff input. The actions taken need to feed directly into quality improvement planning, closing that loop.
So complaints become catalysts for real change.
That's the goal, turning feedback, even negative feedback, into positive improvement.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Let's shift from the reactive side of complaints to something really proactive and fundamental. Consent. Patient autonomy rests on this. What are the NHRA requirements for obtaining valid consent in Section 3.4? This must touch almost every patient interaction.
It really does. Consent is absolutely foundational to ethical practice. It's about empowering the patient, and NHRA is very clear here. Firstly, you need a documented policy and procedure for getting valid consent. This covers all investigations and procedures, clinical and even non-clinical, like taking photos or videos. Eligibility who can give consent must align with Bahraini law, age, capacity, etc. And ideally, the person doing the procedure should be the one getting the consent.
Why is that specifically important?
Because they can give the clearest explanation, answer questions accurately, make sure the patient truly understands, and confirm they know they can withdraw consent anytime.
Yeah.
It builds trust through direct communication.
Makes sense. What about patients who can't consent for themselves?
The policy must explicitly address consent for patients lacking capacity due to illness, disability, or if they have a legally appointed health proxy. It needs to outline the process for getting consent in these situations, especially for essential treatments in the patient's best interest, protecting vulnerable patients while ensuring they get needed care.
Right. What procedures actually need written consent?
There needs to be an up-to-date written consent list,
Yeah.
and it's broader than just major surgery. NHRA gives examples, certain medications, anesthesia, sedation, procedures with significant risks, some diagnostic tests, research participation, interventional radiology, radiation therapy, blood transfusions, all surgery, even unusual drug routes. Each specialty might have its own additions to this list. It reinforces that consent isn't just for the OR.
It covers a lot. How does the information aspect play into this, the informed part of informed consent?
That's covered under informed discussion. This is absolutely critical. Patients must get clear, understandable information about their condition, the treatment options, the significant risks and benefits of each. This allows for a proper discussion before any decision is made or consent form signed. It's about dialogue, not just paperwork.
And this discussion needs to be documented.
Yes, the discussion itself and its outcome must be recorded in the patient's healthcare record, an audit trail. NHRA also says information should be translated into common languages relevant to Bahrain's population. And if anesthesia or sedation is involved, specific details about the type and risks must be provided. Full transparency.
And finally, managing the consent forms themselves.
That's record keeping. All completed, signed consent forms must be kept securely with the patient's record, and they should be included in routine healthcare record audits. This reinforces their importance, ensures compliance, and provides legal backup. It shows the whole process was handled correctly.
Okay, so stepping back, what does this all mean? We've covered the integrated structure, complaints, consent, but the core mission is clinical care. This brings us squarely to clinical governance, Section 3.3. How does NHRA define this, and what are the critical components? This feels like where the quality happens.
You're spot on. This is the engine room for patient outcomes. NHRA defines clinical governance as a system through which medical centers are accountable for continuously improving the quality of their services and safeguarding high standards of care by creating an environment in which excellence in clinical care will flourish.
That phrase again, excellence will flourish. It's aspirational but also demanding.
Exactly. It's the operational framework ensuring quality and safety are embedded in every single clinical interaction, building a culture of constant learning and improvement.
How do they expect centers to structure this?
With a dedicated clinical governance team. Again, it must be multi-professional doctors, nurses, pharmacists, allied health pros, diverse clinical input. They need documented terms of reference. And ideally, it's chaired by the medical director to provide strong clinical leadership, their main objective. assure leadership and the governing body that critical clinical systems and processes are effective and robust.
What kind of systems are we talking about?
It's a long list, but essential stuff. How clinical incidents are managed and reported, how clinical quality improvement happens, ensuring care is safe, effective, and gives a positive patient experience. Also, compliance with NHRA regulations, medical record audits, clinical audits against standards, analyzing patient feedback, maintaining staff competence and licensure, resuscitation protocols, and performance. Basically, overseeing everything that touches clinical quality.
That team sounds busy.
They are. And they need a plan. There must be a documented and implemented clinical governance plan, which is monitored and reviewed regularly. This can be part of the main integrated governance plan. It needs to identify the leads responsible for clinical governance and quality in different areas. Lead clinicians, heads of departments, people empowered to make decisions. The plan defines the vision for clinical care quality, sets objectives, and outlines how progress is tracked across the center.
Does it also cover clinical risk?
Yes, it has to address how clinical risk is managed. The NHRA guidance mentions the 7 pillars often associated with clinical governance.
7 pillars.
Yeah, things like clinical risk management, clinical audit, clinical effectiveness, evidence-based practice, research, training, staff management, and patient involvement. The plan needs to show how these are addressed, and regular review of this plan by the clinical governance team is mandatory. It has to be a living document.
Okay, team, plan, pillars. How do you measure if it's actually working? How do you quantify excellence?
That's where clinical indicators come in. The critical governance team must set these based on the center's activities and then analyze the results.
What kind of indicators?
Depends on the services offered. NHRA gives examples: morbidity rates, resuscitation success rates, healthcare-associated infection rates, like wound infections, unplanned returns to the OR, unplanned hospital transfers after procedures. Also, adverse events like medication errors or diagnostic errors, near misses, and adherence to care pathways for chronic conditions like diabetes.
So tracking outcomes and processes.
Precisely. Plus any relevant national indicators for Bahrain. Performance against these needs analysis at least quarterly, with documented actions for improvement. Data have to drive change.
And medicine evolves constantly. How do centers handle new guidelines?
Good point. There needs to be a documented process for introducing new clinical guidelines. This includes guidance from professional bodies or government. The process must cover evaluating applicability, doing risk and gap analyses, planning implementation, and auditing to ensure they're followed. Guidelines and pathways need a standard format, referencing best practice and recognized sources like WHO. And crucially, they must be reviewed regularly to stay current with research, an ongoing cycle.
What about care that spans different settings, like for chronic conditions?
That requires coordination of care. A process must be in place for coordinating care across the pathway. This means working smoothly with hospitals, say, for an asthma patient needing acute care, and communicating effectively with other agencies involved, like home health or rehab, a seamless patient journey focus.
And with technology changing, what about telemedicine?
If a center offers telemedicine services, a specific policy and procedure is required. This policy has to show how the center meets Bahrain's specific telehealth requirements, covering things like teleconsultation, telediagnosis, remote monitoring, mobile health, and telepharmacy. And telemedicine must be explicitly included in the center's scope of practice if offered, ensuring these new ways of delivering care are safe, effective, and governed properly.
That clinical governance section is incredibly detailed. It really is the heart of it all. But, as you said earlier, even the best clinical care needs a solid foundation. A center can't run without sound finances and efficient operations. So let's look at those non-clinical but vital elements. Financial governance, 3.5, and procurement, 3.6. What does NHRA expect here for stability and efficiency?
Absolutely crucial. Without this backbone, the clinical side can't function sustainably. Let's start with financial governance. First, there needs to be a responsible leadership member. Someone specific in the leadership group, reporting to the CEO, with documented responsibility for financial control and accountability. This usually involves a clear structure of delegated authority, who can approve what spending, up to what limits. Clear lines, clear responsibility.
Prevents chaos, basically.
Pretty much. Second, you need comprehensive standing financial instructions. SFIs. These are the detailed rule books for all financial and accounting functions. They outline responsibilities, policies, procedures. The aim is ensuring everything complies with laws and regulations and achieves, as the standard says, probity, accuracy, economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. Honesty and good stewardship of resources.
Okay, what about big purchases? Equipment, buildings, That's covered by the Policy and Procedures for Capital Assets and Investments. This defines how the center manages its big investments, maintains its asset register, plans for replacements, handles purchasing and disposal of major assets. It clarifies who's responsible, the accounting procedures, monitoring, and, critically, how these capital projects will be funded, long-term planning.
And financial risks, how are they managed?
Through a specific financial risk review process, regular reports on financial performance and identified risks go to leadership and the governing body. They review strategies to mitigate risks to financial stability, things like inability to buy essential supplies, trouble meeting payroll, rising costs. These financial risks then get added to the main corporate risk register in Element 6. It's all integrated.
And audits.
Yes, finally, an annual financial audit report covering both internal and external audits must be presented to leadership and the governing body. Independent assurance of financial health.
Very thorough on the finance side. Now, what about getting the things the center needs, supplies, services, procurement?
Equally important for smooth operations. Section 3.6 covers procurement. First, a policy and procedures for purchasing supplies and commissioning services is mandatory. Defines purchase order requirements, who can request and authorize purchases, who handles contract negotiations. It stresses that services bought for patients need to be competitively priced and offer good value, but with quality as a key factor, balancing cost and quality.
How do you ensure suppliers deliver what they promise?
We're at contract monitoring. There must be evidence the center monitors its contracts according to regulations. Ideally, use a standard contract format. Contracts should detail things like the contract period, how goods services are checked against specs, activity levels, equipment specs, staffing levels for service contracts, also costs, payment terms, termination clauses, KPIs, vendor accountability, and compliance with laws, plus how disputes are handled. Rigorous oversight.
What about managing the stock you hold? Medicines, supplies?
That requires stock audit. Evidence of regular audits of stock levels and security. Routine checks against inventory. Verifying expiry dates absolutely critical for medicines, and clear procedures for removing and destroying out-of-date stocks safely. Prevents waste and patient harm.
And tracking the most important contracts?
Yes, an up-to-date major contracts register must be kept. Major contracts are those essential for the center to run things like oxygen supply, PPE, critical drugs, power, utilities, the absolute essentials. Having this register ensures these vital agreements are tracked and managed properly, safeguarding operations, building resilience.
Wow. Okay. So pulling this all together, what does this really mean for you listening in Bahrain? The healthcare owner, the leader, the quality or risk manager working towards NHRA accreditation. We've gone through the whole integrated framework, complaints, consent, the core of clinical quality, and the vital business backbone of finance and procurement. It seems abundantly clear that governance isn't just a regulatory checkbox, is it? It's really the strategic blueprint, the DNA for success, safety, and reputation.
That's a perfect summary. It truly is about creating that environment where excellence can flourish, as the standard says. And maybe this prompts an important question for you, the listener, reflecting on your own medical center. How truly integrated are these different governance elements in your setup? Do they work together smoothly like that central nervous system we talked about? Or do they sometimes feel like separate silos, maybe not always communicating effectively?
One can challenge.
Because the NHRA's emphasis on integrated governance strongly suggests that real compliance, real sustainable quality, comes from that holistic, connected approach, not just isolated efforts.
So perhaps a final thought for people to take away.
Yeah, maybe think about governance not just as a set of rules you have to follow, but as a dynamic living system, something designed to constantly adapt, constantly improve, something designed to ultimately elevate the standard of care for every single patient that comes through your doors. So the question to mull over might be, after hearing all this, what's the one specific element of your sitter's governance framework that you'll look at more closely? With fresh eyes. Not just to check if it's compliant, but to ask, is it genuinely thriving? Is it actively contributing to that flourishing environment for clinical excellence we're all aiming for?